Welcome. I'm Stephen Winick of the American Folklife Center at the Library of Congress. For many years, we've presented the Homegrown concert series featuring the best in traditional music and dance. And it's 2023, and we are returning from several years of video concert premieres and online interviews to doing concerts and interviews right here in the Library of Congress. So we are in the beautiful Whitall Pavilion of the Jefferson Building of the Library of Congress. And we are very honored to have a group representing traditional music from the Nordic countries based in the Faroe Islands, Spælimenninir. So they have been at the Library of Congress before, back in 2003, so it's just 20 years, and you've played here before, so it's great to have you back. And they played a concert today right here in this room where we're sitting now. And so I'm privileged to interview Ívar Bærentsen, Sharon Weiss, and Kristian Blak, members of Spælimenninir. I mentioned that Spælimenninir is from the Faroe Islands, and it's a country that Americans might not be that familiar with. So what would you say is important for us to know about the Faroes before we talk about the music specifically?
First of all, where in the world it is. It's on the way to Iceland from Norway. If you start out middle Norway, it's due west. Close to the Faroe Islands, you have the Shetland Islands, and further south, Orkney. So it's a kind of island community in the North Atlantic Ocean. Excellent.
And I understand that among the three people we have now from the group, you all live in the Faroe Islands, but Ívar is from the Faroe Islands originally. Kristian is from Denmark, and Sharon is American. So I'm going to ask about your sort of perspective of the islands. So I guess, Ívar, as a native of the Faroe Islands, what do you think is unique about your group and about the music of the Faroe Islands?
Yeah, I think it's unique in the way that Kristian came to the Faroes in 1974, and he started playing traditional music right away, started a band, and he also started jazz, and he plays jazz as well, and that instigated a lot of music coming out. Like myself, I started playing with Kristian in a band like 3 years later, and it's just dozens and dozens of musicians have come from that Kristian came to the islands, and some of that music existed somewhat in that form, but more like accordion music from the 30s and the 40s. But he brought sort of more the traditional music of Denmark, and then later on there was a Swede there, and there was a Scotsman there, and it all sort of influenced what we played. So that's what we've been playing the last 10 decades. No, not 10, 5 decades.
Right.
Almost 5 decades, yeah. And Kristian was my teacher at the secondary school. He taught secondary school, and I started there as a student in '74. He just inspired a lot of the music that has been on the Faroes for the past many years.
So I'll continue by asking another question about the Faroe Islands before talking more about music, which is a language question. What is the language of the Faroe Islands like? I mean, what is it related to?
Yeah, it's got the Germanic roots, like old Scandinavian, but pretty much all the northern Europe languages are related. But then when the Norwegians came to the Faroes, they were isolated for so long, and that's for Iceland as well when they got to Iceland, that they sort of kept the old language going almost back to the Vikings. And because of the isolation, it pretty much stayed the same, but like Swedish developed, Norwegian developed, and Danish as well. So those are sort of more modern Scandinavian languages, and we have sort of the old form. And the Icelandic is actually the oldest form of the Nordic languages.
If you think about it, you've got Eastern Scandinavian languages and Western Scandinavian languages, so that Icelandic and Faroese and some kinds of Norwegian, they're all part of one group, whereas Swedish and Danish and other parts of Norwegian are the Eastern group.
Great.
So when you get, for years when we would talk among ourselves, we would have the same conversation. One person would speak, or two people would speak Faroese, and someone else would speak Danish, and someone else would speak Swedish or Norwegian, and everybody would understand each other. And in the Faroes, you have a really, of course, the mother tongue is Faroese, and then you learn Danish because it's part of the Danish kingdom, and you learn English. But they have a funny dialect, would you see, of Danish that's not used that much anymore, but it's called Götedansk, which is a very intelligible type of Danish or pan-Scandinavian that everybody could understand. It's really interesting. And I think Faroese people talk a lot about that in some way, I don't know if the word is privilege, but they get to understand all the different languages, whereas people in Denmark, and correct me if I'm wrong, tend to understand Danish and say, oh, we don't understand Swedish, we don't understand Norwegian,
Right.
but we get to understand everything.
Yeah, I've seen friends of mine who are Scandinavian but from different countries having those kinds of conversations, and I asked, what language do you all speak together? And they said, we each speak our own language and we can understand it, and so it works, yeah.
But
So
it's a
that's
but
interesting.
Faroese is West-North.
Interesting, yeah. All right, well,
And it
thanks.
doesn't work with the other languages unless you have been in the Faroe Islands for a while.
Yeah,
You don't understand it
Right.
as a Swede or Dane.
right, that makes sense, yeah.
Yeah.
So you have to become acclimated to that part of the Scandinavian
Right.
language.
Also, both Faroese and Icelandic have the same, they have 4 cases, they have strong and weak verbs. It's sort of like German.
Yeah,
So,
interesting.
so.
All right, good to know. Well, another tradition in the Faroes that's very well known, especially among folklore scholars, is the ballad dancing, the ring dancing. And so I did want to touch on that. I know it's not what Spælimenninir does, but I wanted to touch on that because it's such a iconic tradition. So can someone say a little bit about that tradition?
And that's why I went there.
That's why then you're the person.
Yeah. Ballad dancing was done everywhere in Europe, particularly in the Middle Ages. I think it was done even farther east and farther back. And in many places you have remnants of this tradition. In Brittany, they don't sing their ballads, but they play it on bombard.
Right.
But the Faroe Islands is the only place I know of where they preserve this tradition of ballad dancing. And it's not just singing and it's not just dancing. It's folk theater, or not folk theater, it's storytelling, where everybody's all together and they're doing it, and they're making the circle to keep the world out and themselves in it. And it's never died out. Researchers from Denmark, researchers from Norway came over to the Faroe Islands to research Faroese ballad dancing, to reconstruct it in Norway. So it's the only place that they still do it, and it's survived, it's adapted. It's not exactly the same way. It's the same structure, but people dance differently. Both men, women, children, everybody can be a dance leader.
Absolutely.
People are still composing new ballads. Every week I take my grandchildren to the children's dance. Every Sunday evening at 6:30, I'm there with my little 4-year-olds and 7-year-olds and for children's dancing. And it's a very, very, there are dance organizations.
And it's taught in schools
It's taught
as well.
so it's a mandatory part since 79, I'm pretty sure. It's a mandatory part of the curriculum in the schools. So
And
it's
a very good example how much alive it is. Once when I was, 16, 17, I was at the disco, and the electricity went. And within 2 minutes, there was a circle of us on the floor, and we were dancing. Electricity on again, and then everybody danced disco again. So It's very much alive.
That's great.
And it's done at weddings, and it's done at birthdays sometimes, and yeah, it's...
Even we're part of a folk dance organization that's not ballad dancing, but sort of international type of, and when we have our, they do everything. They do line dancing and hip hop and tango.
Right.
But when we have our big end of the year dinner, we also do Faroese one or two ballads.
Yeah,
It's
and
there all the time.
And so just to describe the tradition a little bit, am I right to think that it's a narrative ballads, that is songs that are telling a story being sung while there's a ring dance?
Yeah.
It's two to the left and one to the right, and you do that. You do that all the time. And there are epic heroic ballads. There are romantic chivalry ballads. There are also a lot of nonsense rhymes or counting rhymes. You know, like the 12 Days of Christmas. Only there are 20 of them.
Right.
And stories. You know, cumulative songs about animals, and you know.
Great.
So there's everything.
All right.
The language was preserved through the ballads as well. Preserved when scholars tried to in the beginning to reconstruct a written Faroese language around 1800. They had so much poetry, 70,000 verses.
Wow.
In the bank.
Right.
And of course, ballads are conservative in language, so they had this language in the big box of ballads.
That's great.
There was no standard orthography for Faroese until quite late, actually. And that makes it different from Icelandic. Icelandic was a very written language. Faroese wasn't. It was an oral language.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So when you arrived in the Faroe Islands, what did you find musically? Because you know, Ívar said it sort of began when you got there for Spælimenninir. So.
This kind.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah.
Music didn't start.
No, but Spælimenninir started around that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It was my obligation, my job on the secondary school to in addition to teaching in classes, to offer groups playing, so choir and whatever. But I wrote up the first day who wants to play folk, who jazz and rock and roll, and this and that. And there were immediately some teachers and some pupils. And after a couple of weeks, we started playing for dances. I mean, it was not specific dances, it was just we played polkas and waltzes and well-known songs around in villages and in the clubs, kind of key clubs there were at that time. It was so much fun. It was extremely fun. So more and more people that kind of knew how to join that type of music joined us. Could become a large at points where we were too many. So what was happening in one end of
Right.
So at one point we thought we should musically define it. So there were the three of us and Janne, who is from Sweden. He had moved to Faroe Islands. But we were said that I came with Danish music. Actually, for that band, I decided not at all to have Danish music as a focus, because that would make the country, Faroe Islands, as a province of something else.
Right.
Wouldn't play Irish either.
Right.
Danish music is fine, but I decided to have influences from Sweden, Norway. So I actually went to Jämtland with the fiddler of the group as well, and we booked audience with audience, a meeting with fiddlers, and they agreed on coming with the boat. There was a new boat they were green in their heads when they came from Norway. It was a very interesting travel, but when they turned normal in their heads, they started playing Swedish music at concerts, and two of them kind of stayed with the band. You can see them in the very first. So that was great, and then in addition to that, there was also a mandolin player from Scotland who had a great influence on what we did, because he took us to Shetland, also Orkney, and a lot of influences from these. And back to that was exactly what I wanted. Then we are a kind of assembly of many influences from our neighbors. Also because when you look at what music could be played in that style, folk, we call it folk music or spelmansmusik, there was no, I mean, not one tune that belonged to the Faroe Islands. It was also always kind of cover tunes, if you call it that nowadays. It was all these and that and that.
Like the tunes that we played today, you know, like Rhineland or Scottish from there, or something that. There were a lot of accordions, lots of accordions, because it's a seafaring country. So there were a lot of people playing like folk dance, gammaldans music. But it wasn't, there were no Faroese tunes.
So most of the tunes were from other Nordic countries.
Norwegian, or a lot of, mainly Norwegian and Danish.
Yeah. But I can turn a little back in time to when the ballad was so strong, with all those thousands of verses. It took maybe all attention. And there was also a trade monopoly that made it Faroese being like a refrigerator. It was standing there for some 100 years, and when the monopoly ended in 1856, you opened the door and they were dancing there, and also the hymns had grown into being very special and so beautiful and nuanced. And all that was still there, and it would be a disaster for all of us, actually the whole world, if that should be lost. But that continued. The ballad dance continued. The hymn singing faded out and became more sterilized. But it's a beautiful style. But then when this was away, actually there came a blooming of all types of instrumental music. All this other music was from voices.
Right.
Voice, and voice.
But you know what's interesting? You want to tell them about, about way back when in 1790 or whenever it was, when they were worried that Faroese dancing the ballad dancing was going to die out, because people were dancing minuets and polonaise, right? You want to talk about that?
That's a different story.
It's a different story. We'll go somewhere else.
But yeah, so
I'm talking about when the monopoly ended.
Right.
It gave a growing place for brass bands, for string quartets, and for what they called snudderdans, and that was competing with the old. But that was just a short period. Then they found out that they could coexist, which is the case now, 150 years later.
So the trade monopoly prevented travel, and it prevented the mixing of culture, I guess, is what is.
Yeah, it wasn't not intended to prevent, but it did.
Yeah.
You couldn't travel, and you reacted to it. Some reacted making a boat themselves and began trading.
Right.
But But what Sharon was talking about was it was not unknown I mean, in the ballads you have horns, you have instruments,
Yeah.
harps.
Right,
That
right.
Yeah, I
didn't
mean,
exist.
people knew about this music.
Yeah,
And
that's
in,
funny.
there was a fiddler whose main issue was, or studies was actually social matters. In 1770s, he studied it in Copenhagen and began doing those studies and sent 2 volumes, big volumes, to the Danish king. It was paid by the Danish administration about how was life in the Faroe Islands. He wrote about sheep and this and that. And that.
Wrote about everything.
And then ballad dancing would disappear in some years because he was a minuet player from Copenhagen.
All right.
He played minuets and polkas or polonaises. No. They are much more into that nowadays in 1791, 81. But that was exception. There was actually no instrumental music until, and that was a baker from Denmark who played flute, clarinet, trumpet, not at the same time, but
Right.
fiddle, and he had a lot of influence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. Well, so, one thing that you mentioned that was interesting was your approach to making sure that the bands that you were creating had international influences to prevent the perception that the Faroe Islands was being looked at as a Danish colony, which is interesting given the politics of the Faroe Islands. Could you talk about that a little bit, just the connection of Denmark to the Faroes and the care that you took to prevent certain perceptions?
It's a long story. I could tell it very short.
Yeah.
Once the Nordic countries were one kingdom under Margrethe, then they came to a conflict, and it was divided up in the east and the west. Then later on, the west was over to Greenland from Norway, and that was under the Danish king. And then it was the Swedish had over to Finland, Estonia. Then Shed and Orkney went to Scotland in a dowry. Norway had
The princess married the Scottish king.
Yeah.
Norway had their own republic, but didn't get the islands. The islands stayed connected to Copenhagen. So Iceland, Greenland, Faroe. Later on, Iceland got its republic, but Greenland, Faroe, Denmark is one kingdom consisting of 3 countries. That's the short version.
Right. And so it's important in some ways to just make sure that Denmark doesn't dominate
That's essential.
Yeah.
It's very important.
But it's happening all the time, and that's why we have to be aware of it.
Yeah.
Of course, we are much more aware of the Anglification of the world.
That too,
Our
of
little
course.
part of the world
Right.
also. That's a fact, and
Right.
we have to be aware of it.
Right.
Not enemies to it.
Yeah. But yeah, I thought it was interesting that you mentioned that you took care to bring in musicians and tunes from everywhere, and not just Denmark.
Yeah, and some stayed, and some.
Yeah.
We had a fantastic Danish visitor that you probably have in your archives. That's Evald Thomsen, the cigar smoking.
Yeah.
He taught us a special kind of fiddle technique.
So of course we have a lot of Danish material in our repertoire, and also because that's one of the kinds of dancing that when we do a dance workshop, then I'll lead that.
Right.
And a lot of that is Danish.
But that's
But we
among other things.
Among
right?
other things, because I also teach Shetland stuff, and I also.
Yeah. Well, I mean, one thing that would be interesting to talk about a little bit is what are the commonalities and the differences among the different Nordic musics? I mean, that's a tough question, of course, but yeah.
You want to talk about that?
Well, the Nordic countries, they have so many dialects, especially in Norway, Sweden, you probably also Finland, you have village music.
Right. Yeah.
Just over the other on the other side of the mountain, you play in a different way and have different dialect, just like the languages. When I grew up in southern Denmark, we had languages that were different just over the river. We don't have many mountains in Denmark.
Right.
But the differences, and there are many different styles in Denmark. Now we move so much.
Yeah.
In Faroe Islands, there's so many differences in the ballad singing. When you publish, which has been done, a collection of ballad music, you have one text and 17 variations,
right,
because they came from this village and that village, and even that person.
And even the way they dance, you know, you'd think two to the right, the left and one to the right can be only danced in one way, but you can see where somebody's from by the way they dance.
Interesting, yeah.
How much they use their knees or how much they bob up and down, right?
How far up they
Where
hold
they,
their
no, I'm
hands.
sorry, you can say, are they going to take the backwards thing into the middle or into the back or to the side? And there's
One thing is good to point out, it's not simple, the Faroese dance. It's polyrhythmic. It goes 6, dum, 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 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But the melody goes very often in 7. Diddle-a-did-a-did-a-dim, diddle-a-dim-ba-dim. And that doesn't rhyme,
Right.
but it's so elastic because of that.
Yeah.
When you're doing a down step, you may be high up in the
Yeah.
unstep, on offbeat.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful experience, even if you won't know the story that's being told.
Yeah.
But all the Faroese don't think that it's
No, of
polyrhythmic,
course not.
so
If
you
you
just
think
dance.
of it, then
You don't.
you will fall over your own feet.
Yeah, yeah. You can't intellectualize it too
No,
much.
no,
That's true.
No,
yeah.
but it's not simple.
Yeah.
It's
That's really
really
interesting.
complicated
Yeah.
when you
Yeah.
analyze it.
So in terms of the tunes that you play, where do you find them? Both in terms of, I mean, we've talked about countries, but also in terms of, do you go to archives? Are there published books that you consult, or do you mostly invite musicians to teach you tunes?
I think, well, this group of we're playing, getting back to something you spoke about, you know, where did the tunes come from, or that there were no Faroese original tunes. Ívar started making tunes. So we play a lot of his tunes.
Those are
We
Faroese
play-
tunes, right?
And they're Faroese tunes. And the tunes that Kristian makes are Faroese tunes,
Yeah,
because he's made them as a Faroese
Yeah.
person in the Faroes. We mainly learn tunes from people, I think.
Yeah, and archives, the book that Jens Christian Svæbo wrote, his notebook from 1775, well, he started writing in then. That's a source. It's 360 tunes.
We play
International tunes, because you find the same tunes in notebooks from various places, as you definitely know. This has a little touch of the English tunes as well, because he traveled to England, also kind of expedition for the Danes to see the English jungle.
Right.
And his tunes are a little different. We have some tunes, for example, that Erling and Lars know a different version of it in Denmark from the notebook of another famous fiddler, Rasmus Storm. It's the same tune, sorta, kinda, but not exactly.
And that's an archive that we have been using really a lot. Some groups have actually specialized and made a whole concept out of it.
Right.
Otherwise, at the beginning, I bought Svenska låtar, all the Swedish tunes.
Yeah.
And I read through them all, and well, we only play a few of them, but Yes, yes. We looked in books, and the best material we actually got was from the musicians participating, including the Scottish influence. And we played a lot from '78 in United States, and that might have influenced more on the way of playing, the more together with Shetland, the syncopations that are in their accompaniment and in the instrumentation.
So you were finding these on old recordings?
No, we played us through the through the influence, I think. No, recordings we.
1978, you came to the U.S. Is that what you were?
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
When you said 78, I thought you meant 78.
No, in 78. Yeah. And then.
Good you asked.
Yeah.
Good you asked again.
Yeah.
No, but when you play with people, when we came over in 1978, which was the first time we decided as a small group to travel, and I'd grown up in New England, and I had lived here in the DC area for a year, so we wanted to play. So the community that I had been a part of in New England was the contradance community. So maybe we can use our Danish and Swedish tunes for contradancing. So we did that, and it worked. We had to sort of change the tempiasend a little bit, and but we played with musicians. At that time, we didn't have Charlie as a regular bass player, so we had to find bass players all over the place. So we had bass players in every port, and but that influenced also how we played and what we played. I mean, every time somebody comes into a group, they influence it.
Yeah.
So.
Great. So let's talk a little about so we've talked about the tunes and their origins, but what about the arrangements of Spælimenninir? What is your approach to that?
That's a dangerous thing to do. I think the music of this type of music, it's much more lively if you arrange while playing and interact, because we know each other's way of reacting. And then sometimes soft, sometimes. Of course, we play the same tunes in the same way sometimes, but no, I think the arrangement is extremely important. But when we have been arranging, we often sit thinking of what to do next instead of just doing. There are other types, other groups that I like really much, or we all like, that have a completely fixed, like classical music. But we can't do that, and it would kill the enthusiasm.
Interesting, yeah.
For us.
I mean, we sort of know who's supposed to start, and we know sort of when we're supposed to come in, but when we've tried to really arrange stuff, it's always backfired. So we do arrange. I mean, we do.
Yeah. But you just have to remember.
You have to remember what we agreed.
Yeah.
So a lot of it is,
Interesting.
But
so there's, I mean, one of the interesting things, of course, is we mentioned that Kristian has also played jazz for a long time, and the whole improvisation idea is part of this way of arranging, I suppose. Yeah. So.
I'm a classical composer. I've written string quartets and stuff, and I deeply respect those that are able to keep to write the music. That's wonderful. But what I think the strength of Spælimenninir is more the improvisational attitude on stage. Maybe it's not that much improvised, but of course the melodies go like they do.
Right.
but
Oh.
you can make variations.
What I find very interesting playing with Kristian is that he never plays anything the same way.
Yeah.
So, you know, you're sort of alert, you're playing and listening.
Yeah, so,
And then you follow
there?
something that he's playing. You know.
Yeah, we saw some pretty cool piano riffs
Yeah.
there that you were doing during this concert. So thanks for changing it up and keeping even the band on
All
their
right,
toes. That was great.
alert.
Yeah. Yeah. So one thing that's striking, I guess, about Spælimenninir, you've mentioned you have Charlie as your regular bass player, but Charlie lives in Tacoma Park, Maryland, and the three of you live in the Faroe Islands. So how does it work logistically to have a band that's you know, transatlantic in that way?
Sometimes we play and sometimes we don't. I mean, it's all, we don't change around the repertoire that much. We change a little bit. And then when we have something to do together, we do it. I mean, everybody in the group has other bands that they play with, right? So Charlie's got other bands that he plays with, and Lars has his, and Erling have the groups that they play with. But when we do play together, then we get together, you know, and it's probably easiest to get together in the Faroe Islands. Like we're in the middle, right?
Right.
We have a huge repertoire. I mean, hundreds of tunes. We can choose among them for each time we play.
Right.
Actually, we played up till around 2003-04, very often. Long tours in the United States, but kind of everywhere. Then the fiddler from Sweden, Janne, he couldn't really travel anymore. He was actually taking care of his mother, who was 100 years old.
Wow.
And then we didn't decide really whether we should go on, but then we took a decision that, well, he's not going to come back playing, and then we asked Lars from Moss to join us, and that has given life again to our touring. We're always touring because somebody is, when we're playing,
Right.
we're never.
We're never one.
But
Someone is always on tour
Yeah.
for you to be playing together, right?
we played these last 4 years in Faroe, Denmark, and America. That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we are planning 24 now.
Right. So you mentioned that you've been coming to the United States since 1978 to tour. What has the reception been for Spælimenninir here in the U.S.?
I remember first time we played, it was maybe not the first concert, but the first time we played for a concert dance in the Scout House.
Concord, Massachusetts.
Bass and banjo player, well, he didn't carry his instrument. He came in and said he started crying because it was so much energy in the music. Jack O'Connor, and that was a very nice reception.
Yeah.
Yes, I mean it's like Hans Christian Andersen when a poet can make the emperor water his eyes. That's the best stuff. So that was a very nice reception. Just somebody saying, "Oh, I like it," and it has been in general like this. It's not the complicated music that we have been complimented for. It's for the energy,
Yeah.
and for the directness, I suppose.
Yeah, our group is sort of like a mongrel, you know, as opposed to being Swedish fiddling or ethnic from wherever we are. We're sort of a mix. So, yeah. But when people know that, and I think somehow we very often had a connection with a concert and a dance, because that's where we come from. You know, it's basically all dance music. You know.
Right. Great. And there, of course, are a lot of communities in the U.S. which are sort of Scandinavian ethnic enclaves. Did you find that you were able to tour through a lot of those areas?
Seattle, Minnesota.
Yeah.
And in Minnesota, they also put us into the Prairie Home Companion.
Of course, right. Yeah, that was...
And that area, it was just a connection. People knew each other's. And Wisconsin. And we had really good times, those places. But there's been Scandinavian interest many places.
Sure.
But of course, they don't know our tunes necessarily, the tunes that Ívar has composed. That's mainly the traditional stuff from those countries.
Yeah, but it's nice for them to hear the new tunes as well, right? They have...
Yeah,
they need repertoire, so...
yeah, that has become our identity, of course.
Yeah. So during the time that Spælimenninir has existed, there's been quite a revival of traditional music in the Nordic countries, and also music that's based on traditional music, but even goes into being, you know, heavy metal with fiddling. So all kinds of tradition-based music. How have you related to that whole revival in the Scandinavian world?
Well, you play that kind of music. I mean, when we play us, then this is more traditional, even though it's not one clean, pure Scandinavian tradition. But you play world music. I mean, because that's what you're talking about. You're talking about world music there.
Okay.
And,
Nice.
well, sort of, kind of. Well, maybe he isn't. Okay. Edit that out.
No, that's fine.
In the Faroe Islands, the ballads and the hymns, ethnic, have inspired or even just made rock and roll music and jazz, and even kind of singer-songwriter. You can use the tunes, but you also use the modality. It's modal music. And I might be wrong, but I find a lot of modality in many of Ívar's tunes.
Yeah.
They work within these modalities. There we have something in common with Finnish traditional music as well. So sometimes it sounds Finnish, but it's actually only sounds medieval. The ballads there's especially one group called Tyr, the god of Tuesday.
Right.
War god.
Yeah, he has inspired a band to be Viking metal.
Yeah.
They are fantastic and very complex. Actually, the bass player is never sleeping.
Right.
We actually, the three of us and Angelic, we actually play on one of their tracks.
Yeah.
They actually got us on one of their tracks.
Rock and roll, yeah. No. It's
heavy metal.
it is a whole branch of music in the Faroe Islands that's related to ethnic Faroese music or other styles. I like very much to collaborate with Inuit musicians and Siberian musicians.
Great.
Or whoever.
Yeah.
That it has good.
All right.
Good stuff to communicate.
Yeah. So, Sharon, the recorder is not an instrument that people immediately associate with Scandinavian music, but I have heard it in other groups. How did you bring that into this tradition?
Well, there actually is a tradition for flute.
Yeah.
Like tusefløyt in Norwegian music, and what are they called? The long ones, the Swedish ones, seljefløyt.
The seljefløyt, yeah.
You know, I mean, how did I do? Well, I was playing recorder.
Yeah.
Because I played recorder. That's what I played when I showed up there. And how I played recorder instead of flute, that's a long story.
Okay.
That's for another interview. But Alistair, who had been playing with that band before, had been playing tin whistle. And tin whistle is a great thing, but you can't really, a lot of the tunes they play, you know, you play it first in D and then in A and then in G, or,
Right.
I mean, you know, you're playing in different, so recorders are better to play than. So, yeah, so I just played along. I guess that's, I didn't really think about it too much. Here's a tune, play along.
Yeah.
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 Well, it certainly adds a great texture to the group, and it's
that's great.
it's
Yeah.
a unique feature of Spælimenninir, I think.
Yeah. It's definitely a sound. There's a Spillepipa in Sweden also that Janne played.
Yeah.
Interesting.
But it's not directly connected, but the wooden flute, a recorder now, is quite important in Norwegian.
Actually,
Swedish music.
I think there are more I remember once when we were on Prairie Home Companion and we were playing with Beau Soleil.
Yeah.
Because they always matched groups
Right.
up. And boy, I was really nervous because we were going to play with a Cajun group. And I never played Cajun music. And I thought, what are they going to think? What are they going to, I mean, are they going to want a recorder to play? And they were actually really cool. They said, oh, no, we used to have a French recorder player used to play with us, you know? Okay. They can do that, so it's probably more used to it.
Yeah.
And also, when you think about it, you know, there were probably recorders playing with Jens Christian Svabo in 1775. You know, so
Right.
if he could do it,
Right.
you know, why can't I?
Yeah. No, that's been part of, you know, every sort of music scene for many years.
Yeah.
Certainly. Yeah. So, one other question that's interesting to me, I've heard. I've spoken with Charlie about the band in the past, and one thing that he said is that in the early days, there was a certain perception that you were somewhat radical, right? That there was like that you were that what Spælimenninir was doing was very unusual with the music, and over the years, now you're perceived more as a traditional group. Is that something that you've seen, that this sort of perceptions of the group changing over the years?
You think that we played
Not that your playing has changed, but that that perception of arranging tunes this way has changed.
It could have something to do with.
don't remember.
No, it could be a little bit about what I was talking about, us being a mandolin,
Yeah.
and mixing traditions. Like you played in when Lextulaget came, they played Swedish music, or when Evald played, he played Danish music, and we sort of mishmashed them together. Not without respect for what they were, but we didn't play any kind of pure music,
Right.
because that wasn't that. That could be it. We still, when we play at home in the Faroes, we still have lots of different musicians and lots of youngsters and oldsters playing all different sorts of things.
Interesting.
I don't know. I don't really understand. I'm sorry. I don't really get it, how we were radical, but maybe you were the radical.
Well, we'll clear it up later, I guess. Yeah. So,
He
sorry,
plays
I
lots of
questioned
really
you off,
strange chords.
Yeah.
So that could be it. You know. I mean,
Only when I can't find the right.
yeah.
That's right. That's right.
Another thing that could be interesting is also the way people perceive what your role as an instrumentalist in a group like this. Like many times, piano owes it umpa umpa, and you're the backing group.
Yeah.
And you can't
Right.
say that the piano is a backing instrument, because it's not a backing
Right.
instrument. You're playing probably half as much melody as I'm playing, and I'm really trying to play a lot. So maybe that has to do with it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. Well, you're certainly pleasing to our audience here today. Everybody loved it, so we thank you for that. And I guess just as a last question, well, is there anything that you think that you should tell our audiences that we haven't touched on yet?
I don't know.
What do you think?
Something that we're working a lot with in the Faroes is trying to get younger groups of musicians to make their own music in the same way that we make our music.
Right.
Not as copies, but
Not
their
as
own
copies, but their own music.
Right.
And there are a couple of young, we run like camps for kids and workshop weekends for kids who are playing music. And
folk
I think it's working.
Folk musicians organization that, yeah, it's just like
Right.
organizations here in the United States, smaller, but it is it has this purpose to have a good time together. That's one thing, and for that we normally go out to smaller islands,
Right.
where we can't go home. Right. We have to stay there for overnight and sometimes several nights if we can't get back for the fog.
Mm-hmm.
And the other one is to be inspiration or give inspiration for young people to play. And it looked for, I mean, really long time, 25 years, as if it wouldn't ever happen. But it happens now.
Mm-hmm.
We have especially young girls are playing, a group of 5 in one group and 4 in the other group. So some kind of instrumental folk music will be going on.
So in a few months, we'll be going to Duimun, that island, with a bunch of young people.
All right.
Yeah. To play concerts for whoever is there.
Each other.
And each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's very encouraging to hear. It's great to know that, you know, this tradition is in such good hands.
Yeah.
And we want to thank the members of Spælimenninir for this interview and for your wonderful concert today. Thank you so much.
Thank you
Thank
for
you.
having us.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.